Welcome back, agents. It's Dwerewolf Gaming back in action. And today, agents, we've got a build that's going to flip the script on what you think is possible in Divisions 2's toughest missions. Imagine walking into the Climax mission with a Backfire SMG build so sturdy that elite enemies barely make a dent and status effects just roll off you like water off a duck's back. That's exactly what I'm bringing you today. We're talking a hybrid powerhouse that has 48% protection from elites, a whopping 80% hazard protection, and a sweet 3% armor regeneration with an extra 10% armor on kill. In other words, you're not just surviving, you're thriving right in the thick of chaos. In today's video, we'll break down exactly how this build turns you into a walking fortress, making Climax missions and all those brutal encounters feel less like a breeze, more like a breeze. So if you're ready to become the agent who lasts in the face of flames, shots, and elite bullets, stick around. This build is for you. All right, what's up, agents? So today I got a little bit of gameplay showing you, first of all, I'm gonna show you a little bit of gameplay of me tackling the Climax mission solo. I'm just gonna play this little first part here just to show you this build. Overall, this is an amazing build, agents. You know, I don't know, for your veteran players, agents, you do remember the season where the Backfire SMG was very powerful. It was very popular because we were given a passive modifier that buffed up your, basically gave you 30% in increase in hazard protection, I want to say, whenever you had a certain amount of armor on. With that being said, the Backfire really became very popular again because this weapon has always been a great weapon in my opinion, but the only downside to using this weapon is that whenever you reload, it will apply bleed to you, which can be, that can be very challenging to use, especially when you're playing harder level content in this game. With that being said, this build today, this build can tackle everything in this game, agents, and you won't have to worry about the bleed or any other status effects within this game. As I'm demonstrating right now in this first part of this Climax mission, you will see that whenever those enemies explode, usually it disrupts your skills and your revival hive and your shield. None of that will take place. On top of that, agents, I got protection from elites on as well, and I got 3% armor regen that is coming from the Memento backpack. So overall, this is an amazing build that you can run solo or even in groups if you wanted to tackle the Climax mission and be able to get through it with no problem, in my opinion. With that being said, I do want to give a big thank you to those who continue to support me on the channel, especially those who always have something positive to say. Guys, really appreciate each and every one of you for your valued time and continued support. Do want to point out, agent, these builds are always just templates, things that I am using in my game. I want to make sure I emphasize that a lot. This is what I am using. You never have to use what I'm using, agents. I'm just giving you build ideas, things that you can put together and use and make these builds your own. Whenever I put out videos, I'm never telling you that this is what you should use. I'm just showing you gameplay of what I am using and what I enjoy, what I am currently enjoying at that given moment. Like I stated plenty of times before, agents, I do enjoy making all different types of builds to see can I get them to work. And overall, this build right here, agents, even though I am using the Backfire SMG build, well, SMG, you don't have to use the Backfire. You can even use the Chameleon assault rifle if you want, because the Chameleon assault rifle, it works great with high armor builds. Or you can even use weapons such as the Lud assault rifle. Overall, as long as you're not using your skills or no skills are on cooldown, that weapon automatically gives you 47% increase in weapon damage. There are a lot of options, and you will see when we go to build breakdown, and there are a lot of different variations of this build that I will show you as well. So the build breakdown will be a little longer, and that will be so I can show you different variations. With that being said, agents, stick around. I'm going to show you the rest of this gameplay with the modifiers. And of course, after we go to build breakdown, agents, I will show you a little bit more gameplay of a mission that I will tackle where I will not be utilizing any modifiers, just to show those who are always on the fence about modifiers, to show you that you don't need modifiers to work to make any of these builds work. They work regardless without the modifiers. All right, so stick around. I hope you enjoy the gameplay. All right, agents, I hope this was enough gameplay just so you can see how powerful this setup is. It's very fun, very easy to use, agents, and I do want to point out the fact that I am using the Zealot modifier, so keep that in mind. That the modifier is great, agents. Really going to miss that whenever the season ends, but just keep that in mind. This build does work without any modifiers though. All right, so the star of the show is the Backfire SMG. Overall, this is an amazing SMG, agents, and I do want to point out that when I go over this build breakdown, I will not have any momentum stacks, so that total core damage is what this gun is sitting at right now on this build. As you can see, I do have a weapon expertise of 30% on this gun, so keep that in mind if you put this build together. If your watch level is at least 1000, you will be at the baseline of doing the same damage as you see me doing. As far as the core stats, everything is maxed out. The talent is what truly stands out on this gun. It's called Payment in Kind. Dealing damage to enemies as a stack of 2% critical hit damage up to 100 stacks. This lasts for 10 seconds. So basically, agents, you get up to 100 stacks. That's 200% increase in critical hit damage. On reload, though, it'll apply a 10-second bleed to yourself, which deals 0.5% armor damage per stack. So keep that in mind. That's where the damage comes in. But this build, you will negotiate that damage with this build. All right, as far as your secondary, it didn't really matter, agents. I did have the Love Assault Rifle equipped, but use whichever weapon you prefer. And I do recommend, if you're tackling the Climax mission, that you do use the quick step, primarily for that talent, the sport mode. It basically boosts your movement speed by 20%, but it does not stack with any other movement speed bonuses you may have on a build. All right, so we did wear the name Y'all Mass, agents, which is called the Hollow Man, and the 2 pieces gives you 10% hazard protection and 10% weapon damage. For the core attribute, we do have an armor core, and the attributes on this build, agents, we did have it comes automatic with that 14% increase in health damage. We do have an additional 10% hazard protection, and we do have a 12% protection from Elite mod on it as well. All right, for the chest pieces, the second piece of the Y'all Gear set, agents, and for the core attribute, we do have an armor core, and the attributes, we do have a 6% critical hit chance, another hazard protection attribute, and a 12% protection from Elite mod. The talent that I do have on a roll on this chest is called Ability Rate. Critical hits increase total weapon damage by 1% for 10 seconds. This stacks up to 20 times. All right, for our holster, we do have on one piece of the Cavalier set. And the agents, basically, we was going for the 2-piece set, which gives you 30% increase in hazard protection. The core attribute, we do have an armor core and a 12% critical hit damage attribute. Knee pads, agents, it was the second piece of the Cavalier set, which we do have an armor core and another 12% critical hit damage attribute. And for the gloves, we do have one piece of the improvised gloves, which we do have an armor core, another hazard protection, and 12% critical hit damage attribute, and another 12% protection from Elite mod. All right, and the backpack, agents, is the exotic backpack, the Memento. Overall, just amazing. Comes with 3 cores, gives you weapon damage, armor core, and a skill tier. We do have a protection from Elite mod on it as well, and the talent is what truly stands out. It's called Kill Confirm. Enemies you kill drop a trophy on death. Collecting those trophies provide both a short and long-term buff. The first which scales with the number of core attributes equipped. For example, agents, if you are running an all-red build with at least 5 red cores, each trophy you pick up, you will get 25% increase in weapon damage. All right, each blue core is 10% bonus armor. Each yellow is 5% skill efficiency. For every trophy collected, you gain an additional plus 1% weapon damage and skill efficiency. On top of that, 0.1% armor regeneration for 300 seconds. When you have max stacks, which is 30, you'll be at 30% increase in weapon damage, skill efficiency, and 3% armor regeneration. As far as the skills, we did have the Crusader Shield, which scales with the number of skill tiers you have. For example, I do have 6 blue and 1 yellow on this build, so that's why it's a tier 6 right now. And as far as your secondary skill, agents, use that work best for you. I will be using the Revival Hive, especially when I was playing the Climax mission, the first part of the mission, and I will be using the Banshee Pulse a lot as well. And the Banshee Pulse, if you aren't familiar, basically disorients enemies within your path, and it also can penetrate through cover as well. Keep in mind, the only way to access this skill is by the Gunner class specialization. As far as the modifiers, the seasonal modifiers, the divide and conquer, agents, if you take a look, I didn't really have any bonus coming from weapon damage bonus. Now I did have increased rate of fire bonus of 16%. I don't really play much retaliation, so that's why I don't really get a whole lot of benefits from that. Most of my benefits come from the modifiers itself, agents, and the passive modifiers. So Zealot was one that I would recommend you use. Keep in mind, whenever this ends, agents, it will drop an EMP. and if you're not near any enemies, it will damage you, almost basically take you out. So basically, whenever it's about to end, you make sure you run into a crowd of enemies, and you'll get a lot of armor back and help you be able to survive. And I do recommend the sanitation one as well, because what this one does, basically, this one is a lot better because it gives you weapon damage as well. On top of that, agents, it sets those enemies on fire, which is a crowd control mechanic. So you're getting bonus armor back, crowd control, and you're doing increased weapon damage. All right, for the passive modifiers, we did use Rupert's Tear, which when you break any plate on a tank's armor, all other armor plates are broken. When this happens, you apply bleeding to enemies within 15 meters of the target. We also used Stepping Stone, which eliminating assaults with headshots adds hollow point ammo to your magazine. Hollow point ammo basically amplifies weapon damage by 20% and adds bleed on hit. And we also use the Batter Up. Basically, any grenade within 5 meters of you is destroyed. There is a cooldown in 30 seconds though, and while on cooldown, the radius of your grenades is increased by 100%. So total weapon damage again was 99,447. We did have a critical hit chance of 52% with 96% critical hit damage. Keep in mind, when you do get the stacks from the Backfire SMG, that will go up to right around 300% increase in critical hit damage. So keep that in mind. We do have a headshot damage of 70%, and we do have a little bit of health damage of 14% that is coming from my Y'all Mask. Let's take a look at the all weapon damage bonus on this build. We're sitting right there at 65%. We do have assault rifle damage, and we do have rifle damage equipped as well. And on top of that, make sure since we are primarily using the Backfire, make sure you have that 15% element equipped in whichever class you're using to get that 15% increase in damage. So we're sitting right there at 30% increase in the SMG damage right now in this build. All right, so let's take a look at the armor. We're sitting right there at 1,865,290 armor, 185,029 armor on the kill. Keep in mind, it is showing you 0 armor regeneration, but when we do have our stacks from the memento, that will go up to 3% armor regeneration. And we are sitting right there at 48% protection from release. So agents, let me point this out. We have 48% protection from release, 3% armor regeneration when you do have your 30 stacks. And if you look at our hazard protection, we're sitting right there at 80%. Basically everything on this build, agents, is all about survivability. On top of that, this build does amazing damage as well. The only weakness this build will have is that explosive resistance, and you will have a problem with that when you get to the last mission. But agents, if you pay attention to the floor when you're fighting that boss, the last part of the section of the climax mission, as long as you keep moving in enough time, you'll be able to get out of the way, and you won't even have to worry about those explosive blasts too much. And so I did state that I was going to show you many other different variations of this build, and this is another variation that you can use right here. This setup right here will give you up to 90% increase in hazard protection, which is great. But keep in mind, I do want to point out that as long as when you get right there at about 80% agents, you won't really get any effects from any type of status effect within the game. Like I said, the only thing you will mainly be worrying about is that the explosive damage. And you can even mod to change up this build that I'm currently using to even add a little bit of more explosive resistance if necessary. Now, the Devil's Due backpack would have worked great as well, because it is one of the named Seska pieces, which when you do have 2 pieces on it, will give you an additional 20% hazard protection. So this was another option. That perfect clutch would have worked great as well, because if you're below 20% of your armor, critical hits repair 2.5% of your missing armor. Kills also allow you to repair up to 100% of your armor. So keep that in mind. That's another great option. So basically what you want to do is, to the second version of the build, you're going to take out the Memento backpack, and you will put on a Seska backpack and the Seska gloves. And that way it will give you an additional 20% increase in hazard protection. And just roll, if you got it set up like how mine is, you can roll whatever talent you want on the backpack. I would recommend something that gives you more survivability if you're doing the Climax mission, but any other content in this game, I would definitely go for more damage. So I would definitely recommend Adrenaline Rush, or even the Bloodsucker talent. But in Adrenaline Rush, basically whenever you're within 10 meters of an enemy, you gain 20% bonus armor. For this stacks up to 3 times, so that's 60% increase in bonus armor. It does have a cooldown of 5 seconds, so that is what I would recommend. And you can also change the talent on the y'all chest if you do have this chest. If you don't, agents, I would recommend you use whatever chest piece you have, or even roll an improvised chest if necessary to be able to get a little bit more hazard protection on the build. But you can put in the Intimidate talent as well, and basically while you have bonus armor, you gain 1 stack up to 9 agents, and each stack gives 4% increase in weapon damage. When you have all 9 stacks, That is 36% increase in weapon damage, but keep in mind you do have to be within 10 meters of that enemy to take advantage of that benefit. If not, agents, you won't be getting the full benefit of that talent. So this was another great option as well. Especially I would recommend trying this one out as well in the Climax mission, because when you're playing in groups, it may be hard to get those kills. And this right here, you'll be guaranteed getting extra survivability. On top of that, an additional 36% increase in weapon damage. So this was another option as well. Let's take a look at the stats now. So now, like I said, when I put these two pieces on, we'll be sitting right there, 90% increase in hazard protection, which, as you've seen in the gameplay, ages 80% was working pretty good on this build. So, now we're at 90% increase in hazard protection. So that's just another option for those who like to see those numbers go up even more as far as more hazard protection. So if I just remove one thing off the Cesca Gloves agents, and as you see right there, now we're sitting right here at 100% hazard protection, just by simply re-rolling one of the attributes on those gloves to has more hazard protection. And now, like I said, we're sitting right now at 100% hazard protection. So overall, you're protected from just about everything in the game, agents. It's like I said, except for the explosions, you won't be protected from that. But these are just another variation of this build. Now, this is the build that I would recommend you use if you're just playing regular any content within the game, agents. Not nothing, anything that doesn't require the protection from elite mods or anything like that. This is the build, another variation of the build that you can use, especially if you don't have all the pieces that I have. You can easily just wear, even if you do have a Sokolov glove, you can use that to get more damage with your SMG. But this build right here is the one that I often run a lot. This one, agents, as you can see, you got a lot of hazard protection, you got a lot of critical hit chance, and a lot of critical hit damage as well. So like I said, there are a lot of different options. And like I said, if you're not doing anything as far as anything that's real hard content, agents, I would take out the protection from elite mods and just add more critical hit damage to the build. And ultimately, it'll just make the build even stronger. So like I said, this build is very powerful. And like you see, I'm sitting right there at 1.9 million armor. You don't even need that much. You won't even need that much armor for heroic content. I would just re-roll those core attributes that you can re-roll to get more weapon damage. And again, change out the attributes to critical hit damage. That way you'll be doing a lot more damage, especially when playing on heroic content. Now with this setup here, as you can see, agents, our critical hit chance went up to 58% with 132% critical hit damage. Keeping that in mind, that is before we built up the stacks with the Backfire SMG, which will give you an additional 200% to go with that. So that'd be 332% critical hit damage. And with this setup here, we're still sitting at 80% hazard protection. So overall, like I said, this is a very powerful combination. I really do enjoy using it, and it will be a permanent build in my collection. All right, so we did go with the gunner class specialization. Everybody knows this class specialization does at this point, but every third reload is 50% faster. You do get 10% armor back on a kill, and this is the only class specialization where you will have access to the Banshee Pulse, which disorients those enemies, and it also penetrates through cover. Last but not least, don't forget to equip the correct weapon element to get your 15% increase in weapon damage. Now, another class specialization that I would recommend, especially if you're doing team activity or playing in groups, is the Firewall specialization, because you can access the Striker Shield. The Striker Shield is a modified version of the Crusader Shield, which allows you to use your flamethrower basically. In addition, the Striker Shield boosts the damage of the user and all allies behind them based on the number of enemies that are in front of the shield. So overall, this can boost up your damage significantly depending on the number of enemies, which when you are doing the Climax mission, there will be a lot of enemies around you at any given moment. Now, you could have went with a survivor specialization as well, because of that additional 10% protection from elite you can acquire when using this class specialization as a passive. So that would take you up to 58% increase in protection from elite instead of the 48% that I currently do have on this build. Like I said, agents, if you're missing any parts of this gear pieces, you can easily just go to the crafting station, for example, and go right here. And if you scroll all the way down, almost right before you get to the exotic, where you can craft the exotic parts, you will see the icon that shows you the improvised gear. You can craft this. It's not that expensive, and you basically just have to keep re-rolling it till you get the correct core attribute, and the attribute re-rolling it until you get the correct piece of gloves or whatever type of improvised gear that you're trying to obtain. And another set of gloves, agents. Like I said, I'll try to show you as many variations of this build that I can show you, just to show you if you don't have all these gear pieces that you see me utilizing right now, You can easily, there are many other pieces that you can easily change to make this build work. For example, I will show you another set of gloves that you can use if you don't want to use the improvised gloves. Like I said, you can use them. Another pair of the Sokolov gloves, which increases your SMG damage, or you can even use gloves such as the Palisade gloves, which steelwork gloves, which gives you additional 10% armor back on the kill. So instead of the 10% armor back on the kill, you'll be sitting right there at 20% armor back on the kill. And also, since I generally play mostly on heroic, as you can see, I'm definitely going to re-roll that, reduce. I don't really need that much armor on heroic content. Actually, agents, you on heroic, you can most of the time get away with 1.1 million armor, in my opinion, especially if you're running the backpack such as the Memento backpack, because it gives you so much survivability. All right, the Eminence Armorous gloves, and like I said, because it automatically gives you an additional 5% increase in weapon damage. So as you can see, it boosted SMG damage as well. So if you don't have like the Sokolov gloves, agents, you can use that as well. So that's another option. And what I did was I just re-rolled the attribute on it to change to more hazard protection, so that way I can maintain that 80% hazard protection. Overall, the goal on this build, agents, was to try to keep that hazard protection at least 80% or higher to be able to avoid all status effects. You know, this game, agents, you have a lot of enemies that throw status effects at you, such as the Outcast or even the Hyena, and they can be very aggravating to tackle, and this build will allow you to tackle anything in this game, especially on heroic agents and with ease. Now, one thing I do want to point out, this build, agents, anytime you're running the Memento backpack, you won't really feel the full power of your build until you have your 30 stacks. At that given point, you will have an additional 30% increase in weapon damage, 30% increase in skill efficiency, which will improve your skills. On top of that, help you get your skills back a lot faster so you can use them more. And on top of that, you will have your 3% armor regen with bonus armor that whenever you do pick up those trophies, depending on the number of cores that you have. I know this was a long build breakdown, but I definitely wanted to explain that to those who are new to this game. You know, that way you will have a better understanding how all this gear and how they all work together and synergize well with each other. All right, so this gameplay here, agents, like I said, I like to show you gameplay without using any global or seasonal modifiers, just to show you that these builds work. It is very powerful, very fun setup, and I think this can easily be a permanent setup in your stats. As you can see right there, agents, I ran straight through that fire, no effect whatsoever. All right, as always, I appreciate you for your value, time, and continued support. If you like the content, please feel free to hit that like, share, and subscribe, and also turn on the notification bell so you can stay informed whenever I do drop videos. With that being said, Dwerewolf out.
Division, you're dead!
True Sun's reinforcements incoming.
Keep moving. Need to clear the next.
When you're done fucking things up there.
Keep moving.
Division's on my 6! So cut through the planetarium. We gotta secure that ordnance.
To uncover some of their secrets. The third rock from the sun, powerful, may not be the center of our universe. So far, it's the only planet that can support life. In the vast reaches of space, it's a rapid only place capable of that Mars once had could only be created in the intensity of our solar system. It's possible that the building blocks that allowed organisms to evolve from single-cell amoebas to complex living beings like you and me started with nothing more than the ash of Once home to flowing water, as evidenced by these images. One point, more than one-third of the Martian surface is covered by Martian exploratory craft. Well, gullies, flies, on the surface.
Agent, have Isaac seen the parts?
Just put it out! I need the boxes!
I'll finish that, Agent.
Send a recovery team. Link up with them and you'll be done there.
Suggested use. Missile construction.
They can rig with a warhead to make propulsion. You wouldn't even need a guidance system to hit the White House or a settlement.
Kinda goes without saying, but if you see any missiles lying around, make sure they can never, ever be used.
You're going down!